No sooner did we hit the bottom of the thing, the Pinkie bellied out.
Right.
And the wheels are spinning, it's going nowhere. We can see them, they can see us. There is no SOPs for you're in plain sight of the enemy and you're stuck in the waddy. Legs Lane was my best mate, he was in Bravo 20. Yeah, we'd done selection together, we'd done 9 squadron tours together, and we were just good buddies with me, and he's looking worried. How's it going, Legs? Now, Legs was mobility through and through.
Yeah.
He says, we're going on fucking foot. Door opens, a lone figure gets out, jumps down. Black top, heavy woolen coat, not armed. He's heading straight for us. There are 8 machine guns trained on him. He doesn't know it. He jumped up in the air when he saw us.
Oh, he did see you?
He saw us. He shit himself. It was CNN footage of the prisoners, and these were in their orange jumpsuits and things like this. And I thought, well, I haven't seen Legs there. But, you know, I didn't see everyone, and it was quick CNN footage. So I was put on Scouse, get ready, go up and see, you know, be the guy who meets Legs.
Yeah.
And then Frank from my patrol said, Legs ain't coming back, mate. And that, yeah. And
do your students know that their teacher was in the SAS?
The year 8s, the 12-year-olds go down to the hall to meet an author. So I said, who's the author? He said, oh, I think it's Chris Ryan. I said, oh, it won't be Chris Ryan. That got my kids sat in the hall waiting for this mysterious, famous author. And I walked in and I said, hello, Colin.
Chris Ryan doing his spiel about behind enemy lines in Iraq and Encampment.
Your teacher was there as well, you know, crazy.
Would you prefer I use their aliases?
Well, I was going to talk about Des and Mogsy and Tom. I wasn't going to go with this.
Yeah. And do you actually have these? Do you know where you inserted? And
it's my Royal Navy diver's log, taught by the Royal Navy. Easy day, went over the map test to 0900, then PT, 40 minutes. Jesus wept.
Yeah.
And so did I.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for inviting me to your lovely garden. I just had a walk down the promenade, and it is beautiful here. You've grown up here, have you, in this area?
Generally speaking, yeah. From across the water originally. We moved here in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And I never looked back, really.
And you're telling me earlier you joined the Merchant Navy?
Merchant Navy from school, yeah. I was always going in the Army from school. The Army was going to take 6 months to get in before you'd done some paperwork and that. This is back in the 1970s. Mid-70s when I left school, and the Merchant Navy would take 3 weeks to 3 weeks later from joining the Merchant Navy. I was on a ship, joining a ship in Genoa. I was flying to Genoa, joined the ship in Genoa, and you know, for a sort of town lad, it was quite an eye-opener.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then we were chatting earlier over a cup of tea, and you were saying that in 1980, when the Iranian embassy happened, you found out whilst you were overseas.
So what it was, I was away at sea, and Palamine, who actually lived in that house there, you can see the roof from here. He was down in London at the time, in I think it was June, may have been July, 1980, and some terrorists had taken over the Iranian embassy in London, and law and order broke down. The police handed over control of the situation to the army.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, the SAS went in, rescued the hostages, and you know, it became probably suddenly the SAS were on the world stage. And you know, I'd certainly never heard of them. I was joining the army, joined the Navy. And my pal sent me all the Daily Express Day of the SAS and the Sun and the magazines, and I thought to myself, I really think I should do something like that. Carried on at sea for another couple of years, sort of always on the back burner for joining the army, and in particular joining the SAS. And then the Falklands came up, and that was the tipping point. I was offered the job on the Atlantic conveyor. My mum said, don't take that, it's engine room. You don't want to be in the engine room when the shit hits the fan. And funnily enough, the Atlantic conveyor was sunk by an Exocet that I believe struck the engine room. So that was that. Anyway, the Falklands was the tipping point. Shortly after, came out, joined the army, told the recruiting sergeants that I wanted to join the army, to join the SAS, and he sort of was just laughing. And when he realised that I was serious, even if it, it was humorous to him, he said that, well, if you want to join the SAS, go in 9 Squadron Royal Engineers. So I was all set for parachute regiments and so on. So that's what I did. I signed up. He said they've got a great pass rate on selection. Looking back, I think he was a Royal Engineer 9 Squadron, but I couldn't be sure who it was.
Where were they based? Where were they based at the time?
We were in 5 Airborne Brigade. We're in Aldershot. At the time, it was when 2 Para and 3 Para. I think they've gone now, and they're up in Colchester or something. Always part of the same Airborne Brigade. He said, if you want your best crack at that, he said they do, interesting stuff. They do mines, they do demolitions, they do all this. He said, and they're fit as well. So that was it. A couple of years later, I was at 9 Squadron, and I was a little bit distracted. I was in the 9 Squadron boxing team. We were living the sort of life of a professional athlete. We were having our own timings, our own meal timings, our own training. We were trained. I then did my PTI's course and joined the pre-para staff, which were the guys who got the students ready for P Company. Yeah. And it was just a great job. It was, I was answerable to no one. I was in charge of it. I was running the PT for the P Company staff, for the P Company students, and I was running the PT for 9 Squadron, for the troops, different troops in 9 Squadron. Just a great job. I was sort of answerable to no one. I would report to the Sergeant Major, a fellow called Baz Bassett. Yeah. Great guy, and he supported us in every way he could. Anyway, one Saturday, I think it was, the news came over that 2 corporals had been murdered in Northern Ireland, and that was the tipping point. Straight back, I thought, why did you join the army? Join the army to join the SAS. I was being distracted, thinking of joining the PT Corps, and when the 2 corporals were killed, 2 signalmen were killed, who entered a sort of no-go area, a Republican funeral. They were murdered, and I thought, right, that's it. I went down on Monday morning, saw the squadron dog, and put my name down for selection, because I felt that the SAS were the only people who were doing anything in Northern Ireland to even the scores with these people. Okay.
So then you head to selection.
So then I was off on selection, unsuccessful first time, failed the jungle, and
What year are we talking now?
We're talking 8th of the 88. I turned up.
9 Squadron in
83.
83.
Yeah. And well, I didn't. No, I joined the army in 83. I was in 9 Squadron for 85. Yeah. You had to through training and whatever. What happened next?
88. Your first.
Yeah, 88. First one. Went to the jungle. I was fit as a butcher's dog because I've been doing PT. I was I was tabbing every day. Yeah. Certainly 4 or 5 times a week. Fitness was in absolute great shape. What I didn't know a lot about was patrolling, and that showed up a little bit on the jungle phase. So I came back on the following selection, which was so I did 2 of 88 and 1 of 89. I was successful on 1 of 89. And went to B Squadron. It was quite nice at the time.
If I can ask, how does that work? Like, do you automatically get selected, or do you get a choice in it?
It changes by the boss. Whatever they need. It just so happened that when I passed, it was, where do you want to go, boys? Mm-hmm. And not only did we get to pick the squadron, we also got to pick the troop. And I went boat troop. Mm-hmm. Always fancied being an attack swimmer, a frogman. And that was that.
Reputation of B Squadron at the time when you joined?
The friendly squadron, really. Right. A Squadron was deemed to be a little bit. They used to talk about the 1,000-yard stare and how long it took you to become accepted in A Squadron. D Squadron was another friendly squadron, and the way the cycles worked with the training, B and D would tend to work quite a lot together, and A and G would work together if you were going to work at all.
And what was the reputation of G?
Well, G were guards, and if you're not a guardsman, you're very suspicious of a guardsman. You know, for so many of the reasons, the public duties and this, that, and the other. It's a traditional thing rather than an anecdotal thing. You know, it's not based necessarily on anything I saw, but it was just, you know. And B Squadron was the one for me. Also, my DS in the jungle was B Squadron. Right. And we seemed to get on pretty well. Yeah. And he later turned out to be the patrol commander of Bravo 30. So we were. He was also my patrol commander in B Squadron for most of the time I was there.
When you arrived at Boat Troop, obviously Boat Troop got. Did they see activity in the Falklands, or not necessarily B Squadron Boat Troop?
I think it was D Squadron Boat Troop in the Falklands, and they took over the job that the Marines didn't want for some reason or another. I don't want to diss the Marines at all. Pebble Island was the one, and I know very little about it, apart from what I know or what I've been led to believe is that the Marines said, no, you know, you just can't do it. It's not going to work. And I believe that D Squadron, or the commander D Squadron 22 SAS said, well, we'll make it work. And they did, and it was a highly successful raid.
Amazing. So just to backtrack the selection a little bit, do you remember how many you started and how many?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember on both occasions it was around about 120. On both occasions you were down to about 35, 34 would be successfully through endurance. Yeah. And then that was bumped up by guys who'd been injured on the previous selection, or guys who needed to, you know, to join in, and then they just slotted in. Gary was one of the guys that came and joined my selection. I'd not met Gary before. He'd done the previous selection, come off at some point, probably for injury or whatever, and then he joined our selection. That's where I first met Gary, and Gary again was one of the Bravo 3 patrols.
Amazing. Any sort of lessons from selection that you took from that? I mean, it's a long time ago now.
You know, life lessons. Selection is an excellent. You get a good look at yourself. It was, yeah. I can't really talk much about that in terms of that. I mean, I've got a diary which I could show you later that I took, but I think that's really the hills phase. Yeah. Where the selection is really done in the jungle. Yes. The hills phase gets you to the start line. Once you're in the jungle, if you've got a good patrols background, then you're just displaying what you could already know. Yeah. As I was an engineer in the first, I didn't have a strong patrols background, and it was very much a learning curve for me. Was the first time I did the jungle. Second time was all good. Did fine second time round, and he told me, you know, it was all good.
So your arrival at Boat Troop, was Boat Troop everything that you hoped it would be into the combat swimming element?
You know, Boat Troop back in the day when Boat Troop owned diving, they owned boats. They were, you know, that was the hardest working troop bar none, and you know, you'd have had to do it. You know, Boat Troop had their dive equipment, they had their boat equipment, they had the engines, they had the spare engines, they had their infantry gear, they had the soldiering gear, you know. And I know, you know, I know mobility work hard and stuff, but they've got wagons that carry kit round. You know, we didn't have wagons that carry kit round. It's also, it's a scary environment on a boat in the ocean at night. If you parachute a boat in and you're getting met by a submarine, you know, and you've got to get the boat, you've got to parachute the boat out the back of the Herc, you've got to get the boat assembled, you get the engine on, and you're doing that in rough weather, and then you've got an RV with a submarine. Yeah. It's scary, and it's all in the dark, And you know, I think both troop earn their money more than the other troops.
Do you get a lot of sort of former Marines, or is that a myth?
In my day, tended not to.
Right.
No, there were some, but the Marine route was the SB in those days. Yeah. I think it's more likely that there's more Marines now do SAS. But again, Marines had totally their own selection in those days. Nowadays, you've got UKSF selection, which involves a massive overlap of the hills and the jungle and the E&E phase and the combat survival and things like that.
Awesome. Tell me about the build-up of the first Gulf War.
So from fairly early August, I mean, 1st of August, he's on the border, and everyone thinks he's not going to go in. We're talking Saddam into 1990. 1st of August, he lines up something like 1 million blokes. Yeah. And on the 2nd of August, he rolls in, and we're kind of looking and thought, well, didn't expect that. You know, I know he said he was going to do it, but nobody really expected it. And then every night you'd get back and you'd watch a little bit more, and you know, the Security Council's telling him, you know, you've really got to get out, and he's saying, oh, go fuck yourselves, and so on and so forth. And it was just a steady build-up. He was in. He did the human shields and this, that, and the other, and it was kind of on you know, for us, it was not focused really. We were on the counter-terrorist team. I'm pretty sure we were due to stay on the counter-terrorist team till about March. Yeah. When we'd hand over to G Squadron. We'd already done about 8 months or something, and our cycle was going to go on for a little bit. The point being that G Squadron were out there, and they'd been doing desert training. Yeah. So the common sense view was, guys, it's not going to be us, it's going to be G. They're all tooled up, they've got the kit, they've just spent 6 months doing it. It's not going to be you. You're going to stay on the counter-terrorist team, and that's going to be that. One thing after another. 16th of December comes up. We just carried on with our demonstrations to the police and counter-terrorist exercises and things, zipping all over the country. What happened next was we were due to stand down for leave, for Christmas leave. It was the 16th of December 1990, and we were all called in about dinner time, about sort of 11:30. We were all called into the briefing room, and we all sat down and kind of, what's this about? Totally unexpected for me, certainly, and judging by the look on the junior guys' faces, for them as well. And they said, okay, fellas, a brief outline. We're going in. Mm-hmm. B Squadron's going in. G Squadron's coming home. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert patrols deep into behind enemy lines, over the back of the sort of front line, and we're going to opportune targets, disruption. No mention of Scuds at that stage because our Sergeant Major at the time was Geordie. Okay, I don't know whether you can edit that. Yeah. He was an X9 Squadron guy. What a great guy. Nothing but the highest respect for Geordie. Yeah, he briefed us along with the OCB, a guy called Mate, and he basically gave us that. He said, right, fellas, go home now, have yourself a good Christmas leave, and we'll do our best not to call you in, but stand by, write your letters, and get everything in order, and we'll, you know, the next thing you'll get is a call on your bleepers. We're all on bleepers then in those days anyway, on pages. So we all went home, and I wrote the letter, you know, to be opened in the event of my death. And you write down the things that you would hope for the future of your wife. We'd bought this house by 9 months, I think. We'd been here then, and that was it. And sort of everyone kind of looked at each other, and the braver, more gung-ho guys were yes, and I was thinking, 1 million guys and we're behind them, and you know, I kind of thought I could think of better things to be doing, you know. But anyway, that was that. And then we're at home, and we get the bleep. to turn up on the 1st of January 91 to Ross Ranges with all our weapons for zeroing, grouping and zeroing, and we don't know any more at that point. So there we were. It was cold, sleeting, dark, overcast, freezing. It was New Year's Day, and we were zeroing weapons at Ross Ranges. That was Bsqn. Well, you know, discussion. Okay, fellas. Well, if there's nothing else, everyone's happy with the zero. Off you go. And I was straight back up to Merseyside. And 3 or 4 days later, I think it was, we paged again. In you go. Very, very brief. We didn't spend any time at all. And on the 6th of January, we were down at Bryce Norton flying with D Squadron, or with certainly a large element of D Squadron, into the United Arab Emirates, Camp Victor.
And what were you told that your role was going to be in the first instance?
Andy Massey got us together. He stood up on the table. He briefed us and said, you know, we're very lucky to be conducting an old-time Second World War style.
And what was Massey's role at the time?
Massey was DSF at the time.
Right.
So it was kind of...
Special Forces.
Yeah, Director of Special Forces. And he pulled all of the Special Forces, and there were about 400 of us in that time. He centred himself standing on a table and told us how lucky we were going to be, that we were going to conduct a textbook SAS operation, just like Sterling and Paddy Mayne had done all those years before. And you know, to be fair, I'm very very buoyed up by things like that. It was a good pat on the back, a good morale boost. You know, he made us feel special, and he made us feel motivated. It was a good talk. To that end, he said the plan will be to insert patrols ahead of the air war, so that when the air war comes, we can actually disrupt the Iraqi counter-air setup. Okay, on the morning of the 15th of Jan, we were getting up to the Wales Service, and the Wales Service has said that the air war was well underway.
Skies over Baghdad have been illuminated.
And Saddam was getting a good pasting. We kind of looked at each other, wondering, because we'd been told that we would be ahead of the game. So we weren't ahead of the game. Anyway, then flew up to Ara. The role that they gave us on the 16th, it was uncannily accurate to what we ended up doing, but it was a long, convoluted process of when we got out there. So many things changed, so many things went offline, so many things came online, and basically we worked through you know, squadron tactics and squadron SOPs, and we did OPs, and we did TLZs, and we did field firing, we did more zeroing, we did stacks and mobility. We were told that you know, whatever we did was likely to be vehicle borne. So we did stacks of mobility training. You asked him one of your previous how the teams were assembled, and that was basically a straightforward skills matrix.
Can I ask, was that even before the Scuds were fired in Israel?
No. Oh yeah. Sorry, but it wasn't before we were out there.
No,
once we were out there,
so
our patrols were pretty much stuck together early on in the UAE prior to moving to RR. They were based on a skills matrix.
Okay.
So you've got linguists, and you've got medics, and you've got patrol commanders, and you've got mobility guys, and you've got, you know.
So the fact that you ended up driving the 110, is that right? That you ended up
Pinkie.
driving? Yeah, the Pinkie.
I don't want to. I wasn't the driver.
Oh, you were. Oh, okay.
No, it was Gary. Gary was the driver of the front patrol. I did from time to time.
Or maybe Des misunderstood. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Des seemed to think I drove. I didn't drive. He writes his book that I drove. I occasionally give Gary a break, but that was only when we were on, you know, long haul, flat surface, nothing too technical.
Was the fact that you had an engineering background, did that come into
it? No, not at all. Almost your background, it only comes into it if you step forward and you say, I'm all over this one.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing here. This is my bag. I'm good at this. And straight away, people will let you take charge and stuff like that.
So, because with 3 patrols, that's 3 times 8, that's 24. Where of course the squadron as a whole is bigger than that.
Yes.
So how did you get?
We only used half the squadron for the 3 patrols. Again, I can only assume that the patrols were put together on a skills matrix.
Yeah.
You know, and because why was I put into a vehicle and somebody else was not?
Mm-hmm.
And it as it was, you know, we went and did our side of things. We came back, and then the other side went out and did the resupply, which is quite a famous event of Gulf War One, and they did that, and I wasn't involved in that.
And then the guys in Bravo 30. So did you know them well?
Yeah, very well. Andy was my patrol commander. Mm-hmm. I'd known Andy. He was my selection DS. Mm-hmm. Me and Andy used to go having a pint together, and we were really good pals. I don't want to use just Gary. Was a good pal because I'd done selection with Gary. Let me see. Tom didn't know well. Phenomenally fit sort of guy. He used to get down the gym of a night, and Tom would be in there, and he was a particularly good gymnast. His strength to body weight was phenomenal. You know, he was just like a gymnast, and you know, hundreds of press ups in one go and so on. You know, just phenomenally fit. In
terms of a decision had to be made on whether to go on foot, as 2 of the other patrols decided, or to go by foot.
Well, no, there was no decision. Well, that's not strictly true. There's a story behind the decision. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've moved up to Al Juf, to RR, and we're on the base there. You've got the Americans on the other side. You've got us on this side. We had nothing. We had a 12 by 12 hard standing for a tent. We didn't have a tent. We had a hard standing for a tent. We looked across the airfield, and the Americans had bowling alleys. They had PXs, which are like big supermarkets. They had McDonald's. They had restaurants, and they were just cutting about like they owned the world. Which, you know, with that kind of resource was a reasonable thought. We were on the other side, and we had a lot to do with the Americans in so much as we'd rub shoulders with them. We could barter, we could trade kit, and they dug us out at a later stage, getting us purpose-built Claymore, which we were going to use for area defence when we were at LUP and things like this.
You were telling me earlier you had been given some desert smocks. SF smocks.
That I traded. You know, we were given like an old Second World War smock. Still, they'd never been off the QM's shelf. Still in the greaseproof paper wrapping, and it was a beige-coloured SAS smock from 1940 or 42 or something. There's a few of those guys brought them home, and I think they were absolute collector's items. And we didn't have beds, we didn't have tents, and I ended up trading mine for a cot and a Zippo lighter with the Americans. Wonder where that is today. I don't know.
You've still got the Zippo lighter.
I've still got the Zippo lighter in there somewhere. Yeah. Where were we? So we're at RR. A Squadron had managed to capture an Iraqi at this stage, and we carried on conducting training. We did all of the normal patrol training, OPs and navigation, and all the normal SOPs. Every night we've got briefings, and every night you could tell what's been going on in Headshed is they've been scoping. They've been saying, well, we could do this, we could do that. Want us to do this? What about giving us this job? And every night we'd get a briefing. Tomorrow, fellas, take the motorbikes out. Tomorrow, fellas, go and get your OPs sorted. Tomorrow we'll be on the Dens range. Tomorrow you'll be firing. And this just went on, and what they were doing really, they were going to Schwarzkopf and saying, "My lads can do this, my lads can do that," and Norman's coming back and he's saying, "Well, thanks, fellas. You know, I love your enthusiasm, but got it covered."
So there was a real keenness of the sort of the head chef to get the SAS involved.
Absolutely.
It was sort of a solution looking for a problem. If you like, at that point.
Absolutely. Which is so often the way in the 1980s, 1990s with with the SAS. You know, you turn up and look for the job.
Yeah.
And that's
not a bad thing. This is a great.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. Years later, you know, it was far more tightly controlled. You know, don't forget, if you're in the UK, the police are the boss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have martial law, so the army cannot, you know, just take charge of a situation. But always on hand. So we're getting the briefings, going out, we're doing the training by the day, tactical landing zones, demolitions, you know, whatever we thought we could use. And then we're coming back and tomorrow's plan is something else, and so on and so forth. Right, so...
Till, of course, that it all changed.
Till, of course, Saddam launches Scuds. And the politics behind that was very clever with Saddam. Effectively, he knew that he could disrupt a loosely held coalition by involving Israel and the Jewish population. The Americans were very, very keen that was kept out.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I think it must have been a light bulb moment. That's our job.
Yeah.
We will go and we will monitor Scuds. We will get eyes on at the earliest possible moment, and we will call in fast jets, giving exact locations. We didn't have to do very much in the way of combat. You know, we were small patrols, 4 men. We really only wanted to look after ourselves and keep ourselves out of trouble. When you've got, you know, £50 million fast jets, they can do the ordnance delivery and so on. So we had a job. Very quickly, we knocked together a plan. Mm-hmm. 3 patrols. Okay, fellas. A set of orders from the boss, and he says, "Okay, you're going in, and this is basically what we want you to achieve," which is always the SAS way. The SAS, they don't tell you you will do this, 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 and this. Not necessarily. They'll say, you know, this is the task. This is what you've got to achieve. Yes. Come up with your plan. You then feed back your plan. If they're happy with the production of it, you then tighten it down and produce the fine tune. Okay, so what we decided, Bravo 30 decided that we were going to take 2 vehicles, a Pinkie and a Dinky. You asked me before, you know, how we were able to
because there was only one 110 wheelbase.
One 110 and 190. And the 90 was a diesel and the 110 was a petrol. Okay. And the 90 we called the Dinky, and the 110 we called the Pinkie. The Pinkie was fucked. That's why we got the Pinkie. It was left. Nobody was going to risk a patrol. It was there because it was when A and D squadron disappeared, it was left in the middle of the square, you know, looking sorry for itself. We said, okay, can we get it going? Gary did a phenomenal job driving that Pinkie, and you know, phenomenal, especially as Gary was a mountain troop soldier. You know, he wasn't even a mobility troop, but boy, he could do anything with that vehicle. So we got that, and we had these 2 vehicles, and we stripped the Pinkie down. No, the Pinkie was done. We stripped the Dinky down and kitted it out for war fighting. It was tiny. It was going to be the rear protection, and that was going to be Des's patrol. Des was in charge of rear protection.
These vehicles that come from the RAF, they were never sort of designed.
They were certainly not war fighting platforms. No, they were for getting you to Ross Rangers or the NAFI. Okay. You know, they were not war fighting platforms. The Pinkie, to be fair, was, but then again, that was, you know, they were very much based on what they were using in 1942 in the desert, as opposed to say what you would see up at Hereford these days, where you would have a monstrously effective platform. okay, so we had the 2 vehicles, and then we were put into isolation.
Right.
Okay, you're going any time now. We got further updates of intelligence. Finally, prepare your area defence. That was the point we were talking about making claymores, and we had to hand make our own claymores.
We were talking about this, I think, before we recorded, so
That's
you
right.
have to tell me again. You
Okay,
were saying you're making your own clay.
we were sat in the desert and sitting around on chairs like this, canvas chairs, and we had ice cream pots, and we had PE4, a plastic explosive, and we had det cord and detonators, and we were tying knots in it, and we were packing them into these things, and we were connecting them up. So effectively, we had an area defence, which was effectively a loud bang, a lot of smoke, and stones thrown everywhere. We were filling these ice cream pots with stones, and we were really looking at each other and saying, you know, who are we and what are we doing? You know, we're 22 SAS, and we're making claymores to keep us alive 200 miles behind enemy lines, out of ice cream tubs. As it turned out, and I think that mentions in his book, him and Frank were able to speak to the Yanks and get us some purpose-built claymores and bar mines and things like this, and we did okay in the end. Before we deployed, we had area defence to that end.
Did you remember discussing escape and evasion in advance, whether you were going to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. It was quite funny when we received orders from the boss. I noticed he had about 15 sheets of orders, and he's talking us through and actions on this, and you know what to do at this point and stuff like that. And I just noticed that we were getting to the end, and nobody had mentioned how we were getting out. And I don't think I made myself any friends with the head shed. When at the end of it, I just said, "Well, I think my mum would want to know." He said, "Have you got any questions?" I said, "I think my mum's got one."
Yeah.
And he looked at me, you know, flippant Scouse twat, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "How are we getting out?" And honestly, I must. It wasn't intentional to make him look soft or anything like that. And I'm sure he never, but he looked. You know, it kind of pulled the chair from under him. He had senior. I think Massey and Delabilio. No, Holmes was at the back.
Yeah.
Who was CO22 at the time, and you know, so effectively, the squadron commander hadn't mentioned an exfil plan. Right. Now, okay, that's fine, so long as you mention that there is no exfil plan, and we'll give you an exfil plan, you know, by radio orders. But that would have been if it included in the. But there was just no mention of how we were getting out, and there was a lot of talk about deep insertion. There was a lot of talk about being on your own. There was a lot of talk about maybe a resupply, but there was very little talk about getting out. And I remember that you know, that struck me as something I wanted to know. Anyway, that was smoothed over, and I don't.
As a patrol, you presumably got together and did you actions on?
Very, very good point. Yes, but we based our E&E plan on having vehicles, because
of course,
it was at a future conversation, which I'll discuss in a sec. But basically, we wanted to give ourselves the ability to run as well as hide. Now, if you think about the other 2 foot patrols, they had the ability to hide.
Bravo 10, Bravo 20.
But they didn't have the ability to run. Now, on the occasions when we needed to run, and there were a number of them, we were able to put 50k between the sighting that we got of the enemy and they of us. And in 2 hours, we were 50k away from that situation. So if they turn on, and we could only assume that by the time, you know, they've gone and got their support, when they come back, it's got to be 2 hours. 2 hours later, we were 50k away. So that was our ace. That was our. Now, if we go back before that situation, and we discuss, we were all in isolation. The 3 patrols were in isolation. Legs Lane was my best mate. He was in Bravo 20. I met Legs in the toilets, and I said, "What's going on, Legs?"
And you met him before from 9 Squadron.
Legs. We'd done selection together. He was my best mate at 9 Squadron. We'd done 9 Squadron tours together to Canada and all over the place, and we were just, you know, good buddies. We did our SAS build-up training together. Me and him were best mates, and so I met Legs. We went for a slash, and we're in the toilets, and Legs says to me, and he's looking worried. I said, "How's it going, Legs?" Now, Legs was mobility through and through.
Yeah.
He says, "We're going on fucking foot." I said, "Tell me about it, Legs." He says, "Yeah." He said he's worried that if we get in a vehicle, the vehicles will be like a flag. If you've got 2 vehicles sat there up, hidden, and they're discovered, and whoever discovers them, whether it's the goat herder or whoever, gets his dad and gets their pals and says, "Look, empty vehicles must be commandos in the area." So it's a signature. Now, what he said, what Mitch wants to do is he wants to go in on foot, get subsurface, and then tough out the war. Giving our signals and that without the thing. I said, "Ooh, okay, Legs." I said, "Have you tried talking about it?" He said, "Yeah, he's not having it." So, okay, Legs, see you later. Good luck, mate. Yeah, great. Okay. I comes back from the loo, and I've just been talking to Legs, and Andy's been over, my patrol commander, guy who was my PC in the jungle. He comes back and he says, "Mitch's patrol aren't taking vehicles." I said, "Oh." He said, he's just run me through his plan. He said, "And be fair, I like the sound of it."
Yeah.
Oh. He said, we better get our heads together."
Yeah.
Okay, so we all sat round. I remember it well, all 8 of us, and we're all chipping in as you want. This is what we call the Chinese Parliament. Anyway, there was a lot of feeling. I think that Des describes the Chinese Parliament pretty well in the book, as I remember it. And what it came down to was that we wanted to, as well as get in there, and Mitch's patrol was good. It was a good plan, but what we wanted to be able to do was run. If we needed to, we wanted to put distance between us in a situation as fast as we can. And the only way we were going to do that, by the time you looked at the load that you would have to carry on foot, by the time you're carrying all your infantry gear, all your food and water, and your OP supplies, which are your sticks and your wire and your burlap and so on for building your OP, you're talking a lot. Plus your ammunition.
Yes.
You're talking an awful lot of
200 pounds probably.
Yeah. If you put all the kit you wanted, it would weigh 220, 250 pounds, no question about it. You can't carry 220, you've got to half it. So what are you going to leave? Okay. And then
you used to shuttle it, right? I guess to ferry it from.
You would have to do that even with 150 pound, 120 pounds. Plus you put that load on your back. You're staggering. You've got no speed of movement. You are doing a K an hour on good going, and the going was good. And that was another factor that we all, I think, were pretty shocked by in Iraq, was that the area that we used as build-up training, both in the UAE and in Saudi, were completely different to the terrain that we found in Iraq. In Iraq, we flew over it. We flew in on the helicopter, and it was just Wembley Stadium. It was just flat, bare-arsed, highly illuminating. I think there was a full moon for a lot of the time. We could see, with no night vision, we could see 5K. We could see an individual soldier at 5K. Because when we went out and did clearance, we would be on the ground. We would do a whopping big clearance. Realistically, you had to go out sort of 4 and 5K. We would do 3K away from our position just to make sure, knowing that really we needed to do about 5K, because illumination, the paleness of the sand, the whiteness of the sand, visibility was phenomenal at night. It was almost as good as in the day. So then, final thing is, we'll be getting some int update on the terrain. We picked pretty roughly where we were going to be, putting ourselves down, where we were, and we decided, we're taking vehicles. End of. And Andy was happy with that, and we came up with what I think was a really good, simple plan. And what it'd be is the 2 vehicles would come off the helicopters at a place about 20 kilometers south the MSR that we were tasked to watch.
Which is the main supply route that the Iraqi army used.
That's right. Where the Scuds were known to be coming from Baghdad, heading west, and we were going to go up on high ground and watch them. And then as soon as we saw a Scud, we could get on the radio, and the fast jet could do the rest. So they said, "Oh, it'll be coming in," and a few hours later, young fat corporal comes down with a load of satellite imagery of the spots. He said, "I believe you guys are going here." Okay, and we all looked at it and said, "Right, what can you tell us about that?" Because it meant absolutely nothing. If anyone's ever looked at 20K satellite imagery of the desert, it wasn't telling us a lot. It looked absolutely like everywhere else we'd been. Remember the corporal says, "No," he said, "can't tell you nothing about it." He said, "Haven't done the course." He said, "It's a long course, three-month course to interpret satellite imagery. So you haven't done the course. You're showing us." So it was a light moment with a sort of, a serious backdrop to it.
Yes.
We were given the kit, and we just looked, and it was more of the same. It followed the fag packet that we were working from. Okay, so our plan, as I say, was very simple, and to my mind was really good. Okay, so we'd get dropped from the helicopter, and when we'd done all the normal SOPs, which we can talk about in a minute, we'd drive to OP position, right? So we'd see the MSR in the distance. We'd say, okay, we'd go get what we could get, a bit of high ground, and we'd drop off the OP patrol. That was going to be the front vehicle. That was going to be the Pinkie patrol, which was my patrol. We drop all the stores off, all the wire, the burlap, the sticks and riveting, and then the rear protection would split their patrol, their 4-man patrol, down into the two vehicles,
right,
and take the two vehicles away. Distance we estimated was probably going to be about 10K,
yes,
maybe 6 miles, something like that.
We stayed with the vehicle, of course not.
And they would stay with the vehicle. They would have comms with the OP patrol. The OP patrol would be watching the target. We would have comms with the rear protection. The rear protection would be with the vehicles, obviously a tactical distance from the actual vehicles.
All the kit with the vehicles apart from
what our food, our water, our fighting gear, and our OP gear, and our optics and our radios. So that was our plan. The point being that if there was going to be a bump of the OP patrol, if they were compromised and they had to run somewhere, then we had an ERV a mile away. We would say contact ERV, and the vehicles would pick up and move straight to the ERV. Yeah. So they would pick us up. We'd have run from the OP. On the other hand, if the vehicle protection got bumped, then they would just move the vehicles if they could.
Still to that same RV, or depending on what?
Yeah, depending. They would just move to another RV.
Okay, and let you know.
Let us know we are now at, and we would carry on watching. And that was the plan. That was a good plan. It gave us confidence that we were going in. We loaded up the famous photo of Bravo 30. Of Bravo 20 with Legs and Bob Consiglio and those guys. That was taken for each aircraft. Yeah. And I remember mine being taken. I would love to see the one that they took of Bravo 30. I've never seen it. It must exist somewhere. Yeah. And up we went in the helicopters. The two Chinooks. We had Pete's patrol, which was Bravo 10, with us. We had our two vehicles, Bravo 30. We were going up to the furthest MSR, where Mitch's 20 were going to drop off to the northern MSR. Yeah. We were then coming down to the next MSR, which would be the centre. There were 3 MSRs, if you look at the map, and that was going to be Bravo 30. We were about 20k short of the MSR where we put down with the two vehicles, and then Pete's patrol were going on to the southern MSR. That went, we flew in. What we did get a shot from was as we flew over the ground at about 50 metres, I'm guessing, that's what it looked like. There was just nothing. It was just no features, no mountains, no rivers, no streams, no anything. It was just bare.
So you're seeing this from the air as you're flying?
As we're flying in, yeah, and as I say, the visibility was always good, even at night. Beforehand, we'd all discussed making sure that we were completely sanitary. There was going to be nothing with any identifying marks or anything like that in our notebooks. All our notebooks were sanitised. There was nothing. We were going in with nothing. We were given our
got captured.
we were given our yeah, exactly right. We were given our sovereigns. We were given our escape maps. We took them away, and the RAF came out to us, and we were briefed by the RAF on
the sovereigns are there. That if you're escaping, evading, and someone on the ground can help you, then that is a means of.
Gold is an international currency.
Yeah.
When I was merchant navy, I learned that gold was an international currency, and you have a big gold earring or you have a gold ring, that will get you a taxi ride to a safe point. Okay, so we're getting briefed by the RAF, and basically the RAF do a combat survival course where if an aircraft crashes, they've got their briefing, and we'd actually planned that if the airframe went down, then we'd take the RAF with us and we'd look after them and all that, because we were slightly better trained in the likes of the E&E phase. RAF made it clear that if the aircraft went down, they were quite happy to be on their own. They just now, I don't know what their reasoning behind that was. You know, you could paint romantic pictures that they didn't want to get caught with commandos, or you could. Anyway, long story. Anyway, everything's sanitised, and then we're told to get rid of these maps. So, like a good soldier, not want to be caught with a map. The map, by the way, is of the infill route that the aircraft is going to be taking, and it's going to be dodging around known positions of Iraqis. And when I'm talking about known positions, we're talking brigade strength here. We're not talking about a 4-man patrol. We're talking about 10,000 troops, and they know where they are and they know what they're doing, and the aircraft are going to do this and dodge them and put us on what was a little rocky knoll that was going to be our drop-off point. Okay, so we're flying in. We fly in. I got rid of mine and all that. And we'll come back to the map later. Okay, so then we fly in, and
Bravo 10 in the back, and
Bravo 10. Yeah, they were up the front by the pilots.
After the front, yeah.
Yeah, and they're a foot patrol, so they haven't got much kit. We've got 2 vehicles then. Can't remember on the order that they loaded. And we're either sat in the vehicles or we're sat around looking out the windows. Yeah. Also, 10 are going to get out after us because they're going to go on the southern MSR. Yeah. Okay, then the fun starts. We fly up. As far as I was concerned, although there was talk that there was lock on from the electronics that missiles were scoping us as a target, we basically got to the drop off. Uneventful. Okay, so we got there. The helicopter came in, the sand's going everywhere, the 2 vehicles come off, and the helicopters take off and disappear. That feeling of hearing them getting further and further away, and the world becoming quieter and more settled was kind of double-edged. It was nice that the noise was going down so you could listen for what was going on. At the same time, that was your security, and that was heading off. Right, so then we go into our normal SOPs, which was about a half-hour listening watch.
Right.
All-round defence, half-hour listening watch. And what you did notice fairly quickly was just how cold it was. Within, you're full of adrenaline and you've hit the ground. Within 10 minutes, you're starting to notice, well, it's pretty chilly, It's cold. And so off went the things. We listened. The place is quiet. Doesn't seem too bad. There's lights on the horizon and things like this. And very much getting used to those lights and understanding the distances. Initially, they looked like a guy with a torch about 20 metres away. What we subsequently worked out that in a lot of the cases, there were vehicles on the horizon, you know, 15 mile away on full beam, but 15 mile in the desert at night becomes, you know, a bloke with a torch wandering over to your position.
Yes.
So it was a bit disconcerting and stuff. So we loaded up, and he gave us the signal. We were going to go, and we were going to do our normal loop to P and a bit of a dog's leg out, so that we wouldn't head off on in the direction that we were going to proceed. So you do a thing called loop the P, which is a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're packed up, we're ready to go. First thing that happened was the Pinkie went forward about 10 meters and dived off a cliff. The cliff was probably estimated 8 to 10 foot high. You had the nose of the Pinkie on the floor, 4 wheels in the air, and the rear of the Pinkie. It was going nowhere. It was literally within 10 seconds of starting off.
Wow.
You know, clump, bang. All the stuff rolls forward. Andy thrown out the vehicle, and somehow or other, without too much fuss, Gary gets the thing shuffling backwards and forwards. You know, everybody's out, everybody's rocking it and pushing it, and he got it moving. He got it on the ground, and we headed off on our infill.
That would have been catastrophic, right?
Absolutely. You know, game over. We instead, like Mitch, I think, gave himself 5K to walk. Mm-hmm. We would have had 20K with exercise loads.
One vehicle, yes.
With one vehicle and you know, one Pinkie. We'd have had to make it work, but I'm surprised if we could have made it work. We got the 2 vehicles going, and we headed off. Now, fairly quickly, an hour into our journey, and we're doing maybe, I don't know what the vehicles would be doing, 10 mile an hour, something like that, just clubbing along, try and see what we could see, try and get, you know, the best night vision we could. We don't remember having a lot of night vision equipment. From what I can remember, the driver had it, the patrol commander had it, and everybody else just had Mark 1 eyeball. So that was that. We then were clicking along, and the first thing I noticed, and I don't know whether I was the first to notice it or what, but I could smell cigarette smoke. And that struck me as very odd.
Yes.
And I slapped Gary, and Gary stopped the vehicle. And now you've got to bear in mind that there's just maybe 200 to 300 meters to the rear, maybe a bit closer. I don't know exactly where Des was, but he was in the rear protection. Okay, so we stop and we listen. And to be fair to the Pinkie, it's a very, very quiet animal. And you could hear coughing, and you could hear muttering, and you could hear, and we're probably there a couple of minutes, you know, listening hard. And our eyes are like, so we've been in Iraq an hour and a half, and we've run into a position. We don't know if it's big, if it's small, if it's anything.
You're just hearing.
You can't see it, you're just hearing things and smelling. And maybe little flickers of orange light here and there, and so certainly not people that are completely tactically aware. Yes. You've got to remember, we're 250k behind any kind of front line. This is Renfville.
Yeah.
So we're right to the rear echelon. Yeah. And anyway, so we stop and we're kind of whispering, what is it? What do we do? What do we do? And we hadn't really planned for anything like that. You know, you plan to fight the enemy, you plan to hide from the enemy, but you don't really have a plan for what happens if you drive into the middle of them and you're unaware of it. So, okay, right. So all we did was we put the vehicles in reverse and just quiet as a mouse, backed along the same. And then we pulled alongside Des's patrol and we said, and he acquiesced and we pulled out. shortly after that, and my time is not that good. We saw. I'm really struggling. Is this the first night or the second night? And I'm thinking it's the. I'm pretty sure it's when we went in. It's when we're on our we're on our infill. It's a little bit of high ground, and silhouetted against the high ground are vehicles, and these vehicles are tarped. They're cammed. You can't tell exactly what they are, but they're huge. Whatever they are, they're struck me as something like a tank transporter, something like a huge articulated vehicle that size. I'm not saying for it, that we got any kind of look that it was a tank transporter or anything like that, but you could see there was something tarped up and it was big. Right, okay, what are we going to do about that? Okay, well, we're not going to do much, so we deviated our course and headed on. Mogsy took coordinates with a grid reference, and we headed on. Within 4 hours of leaving our site, running into the Iraqis, pulling back, seeing the enemy vehicles, we were on the MSR. We stood on the MSR 4 hours later. Okay, first drill you do when you're going to put in an OP is you get comms. An OP is blind without being able to talk to HQ. So we set up the SIGs all round defence. I remember I was on the GPMG, and Mogsy tried to get comms. Now you should get if you get a signal sent, then you should get an auto acknowledgement on the kit we were using. No auto-ac. Okay, what you do, drill is you change your position, you change the antenna, you give the antenna more chance of getting it, and you resend the thing. No auto-ac. Now, we're sending out at about 2 watts, I think, and the base station is sending its auto-ac back at, I don't know, 200 watts.
Yeah.
That kind of orders of magnitude. If an auto-ac was sent, we should have been able to pick it up. If they've received us, we should get their 200 watts back. Nothing. Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll stick all the vehicles, we'll go and find a better place for comms, and we drove about 2 or 3K up the MSR, sort of looping back on it, 4K, best piece of high ground we could see, same drill. Okay, everything out, we're at the MSR, we're ready to do the OP. We've also seen these positions en route. No auto-ac. No, nothing. Nothing to give us any indication that we'd got through. You can't put an OP in if you've got no comms. No. Simple as that. It's the bottom line. What is the point? So what did we decide to do? We decided to find somewhere to. It was looking at the sky. The sky is an hour and a half from light. And right, well, what we're going to have to do is go away from the MSR and go and find somewhere to LUP for the day, for the daytime. Yeah. So off we go. It was flat. It was bare. There was literally no cover at all. We got to a point that we thought was far enough away from the MSR, and we're going to trust to luck. We cammed the vehicles up, and we started to dig ourselves shell scrapes. The ground was like granite. Okay, we could not make very much progress. I think Tom, fittest man in the world, got his pickaxe and his shovel, and he dug like a lunatic for about 2.5 hours. Sparks coming off the ground as we did it, and he maybe got a 9-inch shell scrape, and that's what we were in. And then it was a case of lie up for the day, watching. If you're on stag, getting any sleep if you can, but clearly it's not conducive to a good sleep.
Vehicles are, like you said earlier,
and the vehicles are away from us. So if they're found, we're not found. So distance was, if I remember rightly, wasn't that far. It was 500 meters, something like that. There was no cover. What we did notice all the time, though, there was a lot of desert traffic. There was a lot of vehicles in the desert.
You had nets over there.
We had nets over, cam nets over it, and supports and so on. And the two vehicles were as best we could. You know, I mean, what we used were just little indents in the ground.
Yeah.
They were nothing. Okay, so we laid up.
Tried the radio again. Right.
Tried the radio all day, all day, nothing, nothing at all. But we weren't as worried. We were looking towards lost comms procedure.
Yeah, and just.
But we'd only done sort of 12 hours at this stage.
Just a question, because it's well documented that Bravo 20 also had radio issues.
Yeah.
Was it the same issue, as in, did you both have the wrong frequency, or was it unrelated to the radio?
Okay, I have nothing definitive. I have talked to people who said that they definitively know that we assumed from the signals who dictate the frequencies, assumed that we were going to be working out of Q8.
Right.
That was about 1,500 to 2,000 kilometres from where we ended up working. I've been told, and I'm no way of knowing if this is the case, I've been told that that's far enough. You know, a skip distance or whatever, a frequency wavelength or whatever it is, to make us completely, at that range, completely in the dark.
So do you think it's the same issue then that both patrols suffered from?
Absolutely, yeah. It was geographic,
yeah,
and it was geography, frequency, confliction. You know, the things.
The fact that two patrols suffered the same failure means it's not the patrols. You can't blame the patrols.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't blame ourselves.
No, exactly. No, it's obviously,
you know,
planning.
Mogsy and Gary were out in any LUP time. They were out the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, changing the aerial, trying this different frequency, different antenna lengths, laying it on the ground, putting it as high as they could, putting masts up, taking masts down. You know, just non-stop, because that was our game. Our game was reporting.
Yeah.
So you know, it wasn't about cleaning weapons and all that. It was about making those comms. We got some communications. Funnily enough, we managed to get some signal through that day.
Right.
It was completely corrupt, enough for us to say, okay, we don't need a lost comms procedure. It is not the radio.
And that was already the first day, or the second day that you?
The first day we got some. The first night, the following night, because we went back, and that's another story. We went back to the MSR to have another go.
Second night.
The second night. This is night 2. And so the first one was true. We did see the tarped up vehicles on the first night, because on the second night, as we're moving in, and we've got to give ourselves a wide berth to where we've seen the vehicles, because we don't want to stumble into them. We don't want to be anywhere near them. I just want to wear, I don't know, 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, well after last light, we hear, first of all, what are clearly some kind of missile. They sounded like fireworks, but you know, they're not fireworks. They were some kind of missile. The sky lights up.
Wow.
There's tremors coming through the ground. The vehicles are sort of bouncing like so. And there's just an almighty, you can hear the jets, you can hear the missiles, you can see the fireworks, magnesium flares and things like this going off. And I would estimate, we didn't discuss it, or if we did, I don't remember. I would say about 1,500 meters away.
Wow.
Okay. And it's all going, there's the Iraqis are being attacked by the fast air while we happen to be passing. Okay, what do? We had this rather high-tech deconfliction where we'd put tape on the vehicle, and the tape was reflective, and that was going to save us. What we decided to do was, we knew we had hot vehicles. We'd heard the heat-seeking munitions. We decided we're going to get out and wait until it's all over. So we give ourselves about 500 meters from the vehicles, and we went into all-round defence until in not too long, half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It was all quiet again. You know, we couldn't hear anything, couldn't see anything. We knew what had happened. We went back to the vehicles and we headed for the MSR. On the MSR, at the MSR, it was the same old story. There was no comms, no auto-ax. So what did we do? exactly the same as the previous night. We moved up, and then we were going to have to go again. We were just going to have to find somewhere to wait for the day and come back the next night. There's nothing else for it. That's what you do. We were getting. We got some communications, and the following day we actually got a reasonable communication. So we went off. We LUP'd again. I'm not sure if it was second night. That again we had nowhere to hide, but there was a little bit more geographic cover. It was just certainly from view, if not from fire. You'd be well obvious from the air, but there was enough high ground just to give us some cover. I remember backing into it. At about we were getting signals, and it was on that morning that we got a signal, and we understood, we learned that 2-0 were missing. Right. There'd been no comms from 2-0.
This was day 3? Or
day 3 it seems, yeah. And okay, well, that gives us something to think about, but, we've got our own job, maybe just lost comms, and you try and think that, you think of all the good possibilities that a patrol missing is going to be, but there's always the doubt that it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
At that point, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. We're staggering on. I've just cleaned my Minimi, and I'm with Andy in the shell scrape. We managed to make decent cover shell scrapes. Camnets over the top, and what a surprise we get when we hear a heavy machine gun firing very close. I just remember it's going, and that was it. I look at Andy, Andy looks at me and thinks, what the fuck is that? It's not us.
Yeah.
It's very close. It must be the other side of the hill. We stand to, and it was Frank and Des go and have a look. And what it is, it's a mobile radar installation type thing. I never saw it to this day, but this is what Des and Frank came back and said. Eyes like, what are we going to do? Okay, it's vehicles, maybe one medium-sized vehicle, a couple of small vehicles, a few guys around. They've obviously got an anti-aircraft machine gun, because now somebody told me later on that what they were probably doing is they were test firing, because when you've cleaned that weapon and reassembled it, because they're twin mounted and they're on a chain, you have to set the chain right, and if they're going to fire, they test fire them. I think that's what they must have been doing, test firing. But they were very close. I mean, we could tell they were very close. What we're going to do, we decided to sit tight, do nothing, hoping that they weren't going to do clearance patrol, that they weren't going to have a look around their area and check that there's no bad guys in their area. And as we know, or as we assume, they didn't. And then all day we're just sending Muggsy and Gary. Muggsy was the signaller. Gary is just getting involved, and he's helping Muggsy with everything. For the full 12 hours that we're in this situation, they're sending, and they're saying what they've seen, where they are, all that. We got a half-garbled message that said something like, "Don't be in the area," and don't be in the area at 1800. 1800 was last light, so if we're going to move out of the area, we're moving out in daylight, so we're on show. Didn't want to do that, but thought it's a radio order.
Yes,
let's do it. So we pack up our kit. We're stripping down in daylight, and you don't want to be working in daylight. And we just backed out, pulled away, did a big loop of the P, and got away from that. Now, from what I later found out was that those what they'd done, the fast air had come in and banjaxed them. So we had two ground forces targeted targets. Now, we were the first patrol, and I don't know if we were the only patrol to actually bring in fast air on targets. Yeah, it's call-in strikes.
If there were other patrols doing it, we know it wasn't Bravo 20. There might be
they had other things to think about. Yeah, yeah.
Could be other. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we definitely definitely lay claim to the first, and that was actually the first one that we discussed earlier. But this was the second. This was the second one that was then hit. So we knew we had sort of, you know, we'd earned our stripes even if we hadn't done an OP. We'd done something useful for the war effort, you know. And so it was the same again. It was this is now about night 4. Back to the MSR.
Mm-hmm.
No good comms. It was a non-goer. We were also very, very aware of the amount of fuel that we didn't have left.
Right.
You know, one night we heard the Chinooks coming in to resupply A&D squadron.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just A, maybe just D, but as far as I know, A and D.
And for understanding, because they were coming up to your rear. I mean, from with the rest of the land.
Exactly, they were just a fighting patrol up over the border, drive in, drive up, and take down anything that they come across, sort of thing.
Were you moving sort of towards them by this point, or
we were still very much concentrating on getting this OB because we figured we might be there for a month.
Fair enough.
So we're only into about 4 days. So we're still trying to make the first plan work.
And how much distance are you covering every night on average?
For to get away RV wise, a good distance. You know, you don't want to say so. So we're at the MSR. We're moving away 20k, 20k,
and then you're coming back.
And then we'll come back the next night and doing exactly, because what we don't want to be is LUPing on the target. You know, so we want to be elsewhere, and then
I get it.
if you're compromised, if you're bumped, then there's nothing that ties us to what we're doing up at the OP site. Okay. Third night was quite funny. While we're trying to get signals, we had garbled signals, and it's starting to snow, and the snow was coming down like prawn crackers in the Chinese restaurant. You know what I mean? They were just huge, and you know, we'd been building up in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia, and it was Hawaiian shirts and flip flops. You know, this was seriously cold. As the other Bravo team, you know, you were cold. You were, you know, burning fuel, and that was it. Anyway. So what did that become? We then got some kind of garbled message. Because we were using air maps. Mm-hmm. The air maps were what they call it, Latin long. So we weren't using Ordnance Survey, you know, 6-figure grids and so on. We were using Latin long, and basically the only thing we could decipher from one of the signals was that we should head for one of the latitudes. One of the longitudes. What do we do? Well, we're told to head there. We've got no latitude for it. What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll drive up that latitude, that longitude.
Yeah. So
we'll just drive effectively north. And then when we got to a certain point, we thought, right, we'll drive south, you know, and just see what happens, you know. Anyway, that night, one of the squadrons was resupplied, and we heard the choppers coming in, and one of the guys, Tom, was saying, you know, there's the resupply. Trouble is, we couldn't be sure. That we knew that the Iraqis did have some rotary airframe. We couldn't be sure that wasn't a hip or a hind or something. And so just sort of sardonically, Andy says to Tom, he says, you've heard the difference between a hip and a Chinook, have you? And Tom kind of said, well, no. So what we don't want to do is turn up to the resup and find out it's Iraqi helicopters.
Yeah,
you know?
Of course.
Yeah. So we decided to sit tight, and we heard it going off, and we weren't far from that. At which point we're looking at our fuel. We've had 4 nights of trying to make comms. Comms is not going to happen, and it isn't the radio. You know, it's the frequency, it's the geography, it's the geology.
And we now know bits of what you were sending was actually arriving. Yeah.
Exactly.
But you didn't.
Exactly. We didn't know what they were getting, and it turns out they were getting a lot more than we thought because we were getting nothing in AutoWAC. Now, really, for us with our 2 watts and then with the 200 watts, we should be getting more from them than them from us. But for, you know, the vagrancies or the of antenna frequency theory, we didn't. It just so where did it go? Okay, so we were all looking at each other and say, this is not going to happen as an OP. We now got almost no fuel. We've ate half of our food. Best thing we do is go and get retest. Okay. So we put in for a set of radio orders for retasking and effectively didn't get anything that we could make any sense of. So at that point, I think it was the patrol commander, but it was definitely done under under a Chinese parliament. We said, we'll go get retest. We'll go back to Saudi Arabia.
And you're now probably 5 days in, 6 days in?
Something like that, yeah. So we say, okay, well, what's the fuel? The fuel's going to be tight. The Pinkie was effectively leaking fuel. It had a reserve fuel tank which wouldn't transfer, so we had to siphon that by hand to transfer it from. It was under Andy's seat and into Gary's fuel tank, and we did that. So we decided. So at that point, we're on our. We've decided we're going to head south, and this is where Andy had his brainwave, and he says, RAF map with the 5-6 days ago the dispositions of the Iraqi dispositions. So we used the escape map. We used the infill map to exfil. Now we weren't supposed to have. Now, that was all to be sanitized. Nobody else was meant to have that, but he kept it. And the RAF had told us to get rid of it, but he kept it. Now that's who dares wins. You know, that's taking a chance to break a rule. Yeah. If it had gone the other way and the Iraqis had caught us and they'd have found the map, it might have been all horrible for everyone. On the other hand, it was the ace up Andy's sleeve that gave us a route to get out, which at least a few days ago was the safest possible route. Yes. Okay. Yes. Who dares wins. Yeah. So we decided we were going to do that. Right. So we came off. We LUP'd for the day, broad daylight, and we've found a wadi, and it's not a bad little wadi. It's probably as wide as the length of this garden, say 15-20 meters, and it's quite high. So we can put the 2 vehicles in, and we know that they're covered from view, certainly from the ground. Anything flying over is obviously going to see them. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we hear the heavy wagon sort of bobbing along. No, not particularly urgently. It's not as if it's going flat out and it's going somewhere. It seems to be going pretty slow. And we all stood to. We all looked, and it's could have been a petrol Bowser, could have been a water Bowser. I wouldn't know the difference. You know, it was painted olive green. I suspect it was fuel. You know, but it is a desert, so maybe it's water. You know, but I suspect it was fuel. Plus, you know, a thing that we were unpleasantly surprised by was there was water everywhere. There was puddles in the wadis. There was puddles on the. So cold. The snow was melting. There was water everywhere. We wouldn't have been short of water. We were so worried in the UAE and about water.
Which, if you take a step back, could have been preventable, as in if there had been more knowledge on the terrain.
Yeah, and the weather in itself, you know, could we not have phoned up, you know, Oxford or Cambridge University and said, you know, what have you got for weather in this part of the country this time of year for the last 20 years? What are we likely to have?
And of course, it was OPSEC, Operational Security.
Nobody speaks to anybody, and that way, a lot of the time, you're working in the dark when you could be working in illumination. And far be it from me to say, but as the grunt on the ground, it's completely bonkers. You know, it's the powers that be see it as the right way ahead. Right. So anyway, so then the wagon stops. 50, 60 meters from us, and we're all stood to. Door opens, a lone figure gets out, jumps down. Remember him to this day, black top, heavy woolen coat, sort of billowing, little bit of a hat on, old guy, beard. Probably, looks so old to me, probably a little bit younger than I am now, but he looks so old, 50s, something like that. And he's heading straight forward. He's not armed. He's heading straight for us. There are 8 machine guns trained on him. He doesn't know it. He's just walking over it. He's clearly looking for somewhere where he can get his Bowser, his fuel tanker, across the Wadi. So he's looking for a ford to get across the Wadi. He walks over. He jumped out of it. He physically jumped up in the air when he saw us.
Oh, he did see you?
He saw us. He shit himself. And on his heel and scarpered. And every one of us is going, you know, you should shoot him. Shouldn't shoot him. You know, he's going to give us away. You're not going to be able to catch him by the time you get out of this Wadi and get after him. So what we're going to do? Anyway, I'm glad to say that none of us were tempted to, or none of us followed through with our temptation to stop him. So what we did then, he scarpered in his van, and we looked at each other and thought, and this was the point where our Chinese Parliament from before the fight came to fruition. We've been sussed. We've got to put some distance between this point here, which is where they're going to come back to, and somewhere else. 2 hours later, we were 50k away.
So all of you knew exactly what the action on was on this sort of.
It's always the same. The action on is an SOP. In terms of where we were going to head, we just carried on running. We were heading south now. We decided we were going for retasking, so we're heading south, but we're going along the route dictated by the map. So we're heading back to Saudi Arabia. We've been compromised. We've taken the right option. We left a few because we know that they're coming back. So we left a few nice items that they may want to investigate. That we hope that they'd be sorry if they did. And we headed off. And as I say, 2 hours later, getting towards last light, we were driving broad daylight, and we were 50k away from that site. So we were pretty confident, patting each other on the back. We came to a Wadi Tubal, and the Wadi Tubal was pretty big. I remember my impression of it. It was 300 to 400 meters of flat riverbed with some mud and stuff, and maybe 600 meters of siding, between it. Okay, so we're heading for it, and we're feeling pretty okay. It's broad daylight, but and then what do we see? 1,500 meters down the way is the Iraqi. Don't know what it was, but there were tents, there were vehicles, there were stores, there were things that were, things that were hidden. There were pallets, and and there was, I don't know, 50 or 60. I estimate something that big would have 50 or 60, maybe 100 people. If they've got scimitar, which was our big frightening thing, because a scimitar could cover the ground. A scimitar had a 30mm cannon. A scimitar could just take us to cleaners. Well, that's okay. What are we going to do? So we're heading perpendicular to this, 1,500 meters down the Wadi, and you've got all this activity going on. You clearly see movements. You can clearly hear noise, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't have a clue what to do. Because do we just keep going? Do we head off down the Wadi? Because what we were worried about is going down the Wadi and we couldn't get down, getting stuck in plain visibility, and them coming to give us a hand or whatever. And somebody else said that what you do when you're in the deserts and you're following Bedouin tradition, you don't go past people. You go and say hello. Yeah. And you go get a cup of tea, and you go and tell them your business, and and clearly they're going to think that we're they're pals, Anyway, very quickly, it's decided, press on, straight ahead, keep going. We had an anti-armor plan. Yeah. So if we were followed by scimitar, we had bar mines in the back. We were going to move around any cover we could find. We were going to give them something to chase, any cover we could find, stop the vehicle, drop the bar mines, and press on. And that way the bad guys would come and they would go over the bar mines. So to that end, So we said, right, okay. So we weren't frantic. We were just steady, and we went down the banks of the Wadi. No sooner did we hit the bottom of the thing that the Pinkie bellied out,
Right.
and the wheels are spinning, and it's going nowhere. We can see them, they can see us. What are we going to do now? You know, nobody's got any SOPs for this. There is no SOPs for you're in plain sight of the enemy and you're stuck in the Wadi. You know. So we've got sand tracks, we've got shovels, we're all out. Gary's fantastic with the vehicle and he's nudging it and doing everything, gear forward, gear back. We're rocking it, we're digging, we're sticking sand tracks under it. Gets up, goes in again, gets up, and started moving. Jumped on board, across the Wadi, up the other side, behind a bit of cover, and we're just all laughing at each other. You know, the ludicrousness, the relief, really. You know, we're probably the most vulnerable that I felt during the period of time that we were out. And then we headed on, and we thought, right, well, several miles further on, the Pinkie ran out of fuel. We had no fuel left in the Pinkie. The dinghy was still good, so we stuck the Pinkie on the back of the dinghy.
Yeah.
And the dinghy towed the Pinkie. So now we're on a firm bar, and we're heading, and we just kept going, and we're following this route, and without too much incidents again, we get over the border. We go over the berm that we were expecting at the border. You've got the sentry posts every 2 mile or whatever it was, every 2K. Saw them, but was fairly convinced that they weren't all manned, if any. Yes. You know, they had them, but they weren't all manned. And we got into Saudi Arabia. We put a Union Jack on the bonnet of the dinghy, because that was the only thing and we had, okay, and then we drove into Saudi Arabia.
January 31st.
Yeah.
And by sheer coincidence, which is also the day that, of course, the only person to get away from the other patrol, Chris Ryan, he actually crosses the border with Syria.
Did he?
On the 31st. That's the same day.
I didn't know the timeline of Chris's. I remember seeing him when he came back and hearing his story, but drove into Al Juf, being towed, 3-4 in the morning, something like that. And before we knew it, we had double machine guns mounted on the Pinkie. We had double machine guns mounted on the dinghy. We had bar mines, claymores, ammunition. Every man had an assault rifle or a machine gun. And we were promptly stopped by the police, the Saudi Arabian police, for having no lights. Yeah. And just funny. Fat bloke, skinny bloke, got out, took us to the police station, didn't understand much English. We eventually, after about, didn't seem too long, but it was probably about 10 hours.
Yes.
Our ops officer turned up and said, "Welcome home, boys. Well done. There'll be a debrief when you get back." And
you came with vehicles?
Yeah, picked us up. I can't remember whether we left our fighting vehicles there. I think we did, and we got, leave all your kit, take your bag, and that's got your sleeping bag in, if you like, and a few-hour road trip, and we were reunited with
hello.
the squadron. Hi, babe. Love it. Thank you. There you go, Ferdy.
Nice to meet you.
Kiss. This is Melly.
Hello, Melly. So, at this point, you're sort of finding out the success of, as in hindsight, the success of your mission.
Oh yeah, very much. Oh, I mean, we had no idea. We didn't even know on the night of the first attack, which was very visual and very. I mean, we didn't see the attack on the radar site, but we found out about that later. But we definitely saw the attack on the other one.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that was as a result of our.
No, exactly.
Because we didn't think we'd had any comms. Yeah, but we had comms. And we'd also been retasked on the radio, but we never got it. And we were pretty much criticised for that. You know, we were.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, big time. You know.
You had no comms.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they basically said that we were ignoring radio orders, although they didn't pursue it, and that was that.
Yeah.
And we were then shipped back fairly soon, shipped back to UAE,
UAE, okay.
and then we carried on doing hearts and minds with the UAE and training their counter-terrorist teams.
Oh, really?
Because
So
we were current on
What
counter-terrorism.
state were you in? Like, did you get time off?
It was getting ourselves fit again, because although it was only 10 days, I remember looking at my legs and thinking, "Whose are these legs?" Because I'd only ever been in a vehicle for 10 days, and all my legs had totally lost weight. Yeah, and I frostbite on the soles of the feet, because being in a vehicle, you don't keep, and it was, you know, it was Baltic. I would say it was probably -10 most nights, things like
So
that.
how much time did you get before you were actually retasked? If you
Bugger all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bugger all. I mean, I remember Geordie coming to me and saying, "It's all right, Scouse. I've told him to give you, an easy ride." That didn't happen.
Oh, really?
No. Straight away, we.
Now you're training the Sultan's troop on
Yeah,
CQB. Nothing to do with the war.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to sort of pat him on the back and think. We flew up to meet Norman. Norman.
Chris. Who's this?
Norman Schwarzkopf.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Who was in charge of the war, and he wanted to say thanks.
That Norman. I didn't know you met him.
Yeah. He was Norm to us. When you shook his hand, he's Norm.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
wow. Yeah, he's a big chief.
And then some of the guys went.
What about DBL? Did you meet the Delabilia? Oh, you'd already.
Delabilia was cutting around. Was in briefings and that. Not that I was invited to. I mean, as a lance corporal. But yeah, and the sort of. So we did a little bit of glad handing and a few pats on the backs. What we didn't realise is that actually the head shed seemed to think that we'd done a pretty shit job.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know, because they weren't there and they were just happy to cast aspersion, you know, instead of.
Just put that in context. There were 3 patrols that at first decided to abort upon seeing the landscape. Just to briefly, so in terms of, so this was a patrol that decided to go on foot. What is your take on that decision to sort of abort, given the fact that they were on foot and
absolutely, you know, the man on the ground is in the right position to make the choice. He was asking for a 24-hour pushback. Yeah. In the scheme of things, certainly as a lance corporal at the time, you know, why was that such a big problem?
Absolutely.
His team would have been in the same position as Mitch's team, Bravo 20, had he have got out on the ground and walked in.
Just for context, of that patrol, sadly, 3 guys lost their lives.
In Bravo 20, yeah.
So in hindsight, you could argue it was the right decision. No, absolutely. So about the Bravo 20, obviously you said earlier, your best mate, Legs, was in that patrol. Yep. Sadly, he didn't. I mean, that must have been, difficult.
Yeah, I was put on standby to go. What happened was this on the CNN. The prisoners were being released once Saddam had gone for surrender. But if you remember, the rule was that we were just going to kick him out of Kuwait. This was not about moving all the way to Baghdad. So he kept his job. Yeah. He kept his state. He surrendered Kuwait to the coalition, and then there was CNN footage of the prisoners, and we saw Big Mal from Bravo 20, and we saw Mitch, and these were in their orange jumpsuits and things like this. And I thought, well, I haven't seen Legs there, but you know, I didn't see everyone, and it was quick CNN footage. So I was put on Scouse, get ready, go up and see, go and meet, be the guy who meets Legs.
Yeah.
And then Frank from my patrol, who knew Legs was ex-Para Sqn, and Legs had transferred from Para Sqn. like he taught me into letting him go up. And anyway, after a little while, he was stood down and he come back to me and he said, that was Frank, and he said, legs ain't coming back, mate. So that was that. And then years later and months later, we built the picture of Legs' final time with Dinger, and that, yeah.
Bob, Vince and Legs were the guys from that patrol that sadly didn't make it back. Chris Ryan did, and I believe you met him at back in the
I think it was back in it was a fairly quick because I have a recollection that it may have been in the UAE or it may have been in Saudi Arabia. I think it was in the UAE that Chris Ryan gave his debrief and basically talked us through the events of his capture or of his walk, followed by his handover to the Syrians. And he thought at one point that the Syrians were giving him to the Iraqis, but fortunately for him, that didn't happen. And he was returned to us.
Just say, like, what was Chris? I mean,
he'd lost a lot of weight too. I think he was talking about then he'd lost a couple of stone. He was a pretty fit and muscular guy at the. Certainly when we deployed, and he was a lot leaner and a lot wirier when he came back.
When we spoke on the phone, you told me this incredible story.
It was a funny story, and on one of what's the chances? Okay, so I teach in a local grammar school, and the year 8s, the 12-year-olds were having to come out of my lesson and go down to the hall to meet an author.
And how long ago? How long after? Like what?
Oh, this is only 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah. And
2020.
Yeah, something just before the lockdown, about 2019, 2020, something like that. And I said to the lads, I said, "Who's the author?" Thinking it might be J.K. Rowling or something like that. He said, "No, I think it's Chris Ryan." I said, "I won't be Chris Ryan." I said, "But I'll come down anyway and see you then." And then I came down, got my kids sat in the hall waiting for this mysterious, famous author to come in. And there's Colin in the foyer. And I walked in and I said, "Hello, Colin." And the double take on both our faces, it was just so weird that
you haven't seen each other.
We are not since I left Bsqn.
Which is when, by the way, just for
back in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then I became a teacher then. Yeah, so it was just, what's the chances? And then Chris gave a talk on his books and.
Do your students know that their teacher was in the SAS?
Some of them. We have a cadet force.
Okay.
At the school, and some of them know because I was at a training camp once, and I walked into a few of them, unbeknownst.
So I can just imagine Chris Ryan doing his spiel about behind enemy lines in Iraq, and go on, your teacher might.
Yeah, your teacher was there as well. Crazy. I mean, what's the chances? Yeah. And there was another crazy time that I met Gary, best man, walking in the mountains, and just got talking to a guy in the mountains, and got talking. He was ex-RAF Reg. Gary was ex-RAF, and got talking before you knew it. And Gary was the driver in my patrol, or the patrol that I was in, and this guy was his best man. And we just, I wasn't even going to talk to the bloke. I just thought I'll chat with him out of personality. I could have just carried on running, but as it was, I just stopped at the chat. 10 minutes into the conversation, he was Gary. Oh, you'll have to edit a lot of these names, please. He was Gary's best man, and what's the chances? Just millions to one.
That is absolutely incredible. We're coming pretty much to the end. I guess one or two things. One sentence that I don't dare use, which I found quite poignant, is where he goes, "Too much analysis can lead to paralysis." And even you and me today, I do loads of analysis, but at the end of the day, people take their decisions and they.
That's it. I mean, and you look at most of the the decisions that were actually taken by the guys on the ground, by the guys in the patrol at the time. There's nothing prepared you for that. You know, you've taken in the environment, the enemy situation, the time of day, the light, the geography, and you've made your decision based on that. There's no textbook.
It's a bit like in finance. If you do an investment, you put some in the American index, some in the European index, some in the UK, some in the Japanese. This is how you get a result. You need to hedge your bets.
Yeah. And some of them will lose, and some of them will win.
It might have gone that the foot patrols were actually the right way forward. So in a way, you could argue as a squadron, B Squadron did the right thing by spreading that risk, and people.
It was entirely a patrol decision. Initially, it was a case of no, you will take vehicles. That was some of the guys said, well, what if we just want to walk in, or be dropped off, and it came back, no, you will take vehicles. And then in a short, somebody must have said, look, it's their job, let them decide how they're going to do it, and then it came for probably what was an unfortunately well-intentioned and fairly well analysed decision, but the wrong decision on the day was to walk in. And when you look back and you join up the dots and you realise how piss poor the intelligence we were getting was and could have been better, and we didn't have.
Because that's another thing, the Bravo Cruiser Patrol, they absolutely tested the RF vehicle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean they had the vehicles, they just didn't have a Pinkie. They had 90s, so they could have done what we.
And they got around with them.
Yeah.
And realised now they're not up to it. In terms of lessons learned, and do you have any ideas in terms of how SOPs may have been adjusted afterwards? Or
the biggest one is the kit. We were working in those days. You had, one spearhead squadron, one standby squadron, one courses squadron, and one SP team, and it was assumed that if the shit hit the fan, one of the squadrons who was on standby to go would go. They would take the standby kit, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
Since realised that you actually need every squadron needs its warfighting kit, so it can go out, hit the ground, and it's got every piece of kit that it needs in case you need two squadrons.
So we're now talking 91. How long did you stay in the military for?
I stayed in the military till 2020.
Okay,
but in reserve service for a lot of the time. So I was doing my school teaching and reserve. I was in 23.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So I took Jan.
The other guys.
Yeah, I took Jan, who runs that weekend.
How it all comes together
through his selection.
Because you and I,
or through his many selections.
I like to do these events, so I did weekend 9, and I know that was 2-3G Squadron.
Yep.
There is a Facebook group with the channel which I mutual contact as far as Danny is in. So I said I want to do something about the Bravo patrols. And he said, well, it's a shame you didn't catch up with Nick. I said, why is that? Well, he was there. So I thought you were a 2-2 guy who was doing the checkpoint.
How are you, mate?
Hey, guys. Good, thanks.
You okay?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely get some water. Hey, guys.
Time is 10:58 over.
Interesting. Do you have to do selection again for 2-3?
It's quite funny. I mean, the PSAO at the time thought that would be the way ahead. But I phoned up Gonzo, who was the RSM of 2-3 at the time, who was my sergeant major in B Squadron 2-2, and he said, "I'll have a word."
Yes, yeah.
And that was enough for that.
Because you'd actually already done it twice.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I think this takes us to the end. So unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, I want to thank you. Well, first of all, for your service. And whilst I'm Dutch, I think the services that you did at the time benefited all of the Western societies, then democracy. So thank you very much for your service, and thank you very much for sharing your story today. And
you're very welcome.
Inviting me to your home. So this is really a real privilege to meet you.
Very welcome.
I mean, I at the time, so I'm not that young, but I was a student in '91. I was probably 19 or 20, and when these books came out, the Bravo 2-0, I remember reading that, and I just couldn't stop reading. I was at the bus stop, and just because none of us had heard of any, even simple things like the 5 Ps and proper preparation.
Yeah.
None of us had heard of any of this, and it actually inspired me at the time to then volunteer for the.
Well, if I could give you tuppence worth on that. I've always been quite appreciative of Andy McNabb, for writing that book. I couldn't say what happened once we deployed to Andy's patrol. I was at the debriefs and that, but you know that's his business. However, what he writes, to the point that we deploy, to the point that we're in those aircraft, is a word perfect diary, as I remember it.
Really?
You know, he talks about when Tom gave the NBC lessons with an accent as thick as Tyne mist, was exactly it. You know, we were there. I remember I read till he deployed, because I didn't really want to go any further, but I thought, thanks very much, Andy, because that's exactly as I remember it. So if you wanted to reread that, that would be, I would say, word perfect from flash to bang. That's exactly how, you know, the meetings, the briefings, the looks on each other's faces. You know, it was he's just done that so well.
I love the book 7th Troop that he did. Just
right.
The
Which is Air Troop.
Yeah. It's a huge book.
Because we were 6th Troop.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, boat troop is 6th Troop. 7th Troop is Air Troop. 9th Troop was Mountains. And mobility must have been 11th Troop, maybe 12th Troop. I can't remember.
So you left 2 SAS in the late 90s, as you say.
Yeah.
And then what sort of tasking did you do for the remainder of the 90s? Well, it must be loads of things, but
yeah, you know, some fantastic exercises. You know, unbelievable. You know, to the point that you'd have to pinch yourself to think you'd done them. Yeah.
Oh wow, awesome. Well, again, thanks very much for your inviting
no problem.
me and
nice to meet you.
Story with you.
Nice
to meet you. And we'll leave it there. If you've watched this video and you want to get in touch with Nick, because I understand you do after dinner speaking engagement and things like that.
I can do it.
Use the email address that's in the channel description, or if you join the channel Facebook group, then either way, I'll be very happy to get you in touch.
I know some of the places that we were at, the Wadi Tubal and the likes of that, which was a big wadi.
Yeah.
Easy day, went over the map test till 0900, then PT, 40 minutes. Jesus wept.
Yeah.
And so did I. It was hard, but actually enjoyed it a bit. A jog round to loosen up, then squat thrust, spare piece again, shuttles, 28 seconds. I'm slow at that sort of thing, but I had loads left at the end, and more. And there's.
Did everyone do this, or this was your?
I don't think so. No, I just filled that in. But it's only the hills. I think I didn't do the jungle. Saturday went on the beer. Bernie Diane Teddy. The jungle. January 28th, 9th, 1988. These are Dutchmen and Spaniards and Frenchmen and things like that join our course. It's Combat for Survival Instructors course.
Cool. Who are the Dutch guys? They're up front somewhere.
I honestly know. I mean, I've got a feel he might have been.
Alright guys, please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed that. I want to see more stories like that. Now if you want to tell your story, please get in touch. Now there's an email in the description of the channel. And if you do, I will promise you a few things. One is I will properly research the context of your story so that we can treat it with the respect it deserves. If at all possible, the chat will be in person. Finally, circle of trust. Nothing gets published without your consent. Alright guys, if you've enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. As always, see you in the hills.